How's it going, guys? Welcome back to another edition of the Athletes Hub, another weekly roundup. Hope you all enjoyed your football weekend and the week so far. I mean, I certainly did on Sunday. It was a great win for United. And there's been managerial departures, new appointments, a lot of goals to go through as well. So as always, joining me to discuss all of that is Flexx.
Yes, how we doing, guys? How's it going, Rich?
Yes, Flexx, how's it going?
Yeah, not too bad. How's it going on your side?
Very good. Like I mentioned in the intro, a good weekend for United, getting a win at Anfield, 2-1 victory away from home. Do you know what? I was watching the game. I was actually really impressed with how just the application, the tactical execution as well of the game. I think Amorim got it perfectly, to be honest with you. Of course, on the balance of play, Liverpool could have had a lot of goals. Gakpo could have had a hat-trick, missed a few opportunities, hitting the post twice. But I feel like that was a really big victory for Amorim because we've spoken on the podcast, over the last couple of weeks and last few months about him potentially losing his job. And for him to sort of beat Sunderland before the international break and then beat Liverpool away from home, two massive victories for him. But I feel like the most important thing now is for him to sort of kick on with this and to beat Brighton on Saturday and then just keep that momentum going. Because if they were to sort of have another bad performance on Saturday against Brighton and to lose that game, everything we've done up until this point, the last couple of weeks, would have been for nothing. So, yeah, really solid victory for United there. But Liverpool, 4 losses in a row now, £400 million spent. I mean, what's going on there?
I mean, look, team just needs time to gel. There's nothing going on, and it's fine. They just need time to gel. There's a load of signings. There's the Arne Slot philosophy. Is kicking in, and they all just need time to adjust. So, for me, I'd say there is no real cause for concern. We're still.
But I mean, when you spend that money, because we spoke about Liverpool being the favourites at the beginning of the season and in the summer as well when they signed, likes of Ekitike came in, Wirtz, Frimpong, but £400 million spent. They need time to settle in. Isn't the manager's job, to find a way to kind of get all these players to play in the right system? Because it's a lot of talent he's got there, but the best managers will find a way to incorporate all these players and make sure that they're playing.
Yeah, but it doesn't happen straight away. I mean, because you spend all that money doesn't mean because they're all top talent, they're all just going to settle in straight away. It just doesn't work like that.
Yeah, but I mean, I get that. But my point is that if it was another club to spend that amount of money, there would be headlines about it. There would be the manager would be
It'll be the same pressure. I'm hearing the same pressure when Chelsea signed, 2 people for over £100 million. It's the same thing. But those same 2 players are playing very well and nobody's talking about it. So it's one of those things where you just need time, and unfortunately the game has run out of time, so that's where people say whatever they go on about saying. But let's just be real, you don't sign 5 players, 5 in 5 key positions and expect it just to work. It takes time.
Yeah, that's true. I think, but some of those players have not been in the team regularly. I think Frimpong's been on the bench mostly. Obviously, Wirtz has been in and out at times. Isak's had a late start this season because of his antics during the summer. So again, when you're signing all these players in a transfer window, I'm assuming there's a system. There's a plan in place of how we're going to integrate these players. Of course, we know a lot of these players coming in are, apart from Kirkes and Isak, who play in the Premier League, but the other players are coming from other countries and other leagues. So there's going to be.
So it takes time. It goes back to what you said. It takes time.
It takes time, but at the same time as well, like I mentioned, some of these players have not been in the team regularly. They've been in and out the side. So
it takes time. This is what it comes down to. It
takes time, but in the Premier League now, again, I think the reason why Arne Slot is probably getting not as much flack is because they won the Premier League last season, and obviously, as you mentioned, players coming from other countries. But I think 4 losses on the bounce. So some of those games as well, they got themselves back in the game and probably shouldn't have lost it late on. But yeah, I think Liverpool at the moment are not getting as much flack because they won the Premier League last season. And
you buy yourself grace when you win stuff. It's when you don't win stuff, you don't have the grace. And even with those 4 losses on the bounce, they're still 3rd in the table, and maybe 5 points behind those that are top. So it's really not that deep. You know what I'm saying?
United, I think United are 2 points behind Liverpool at this stage of the season?
Yeah.
Who would have thought that? Who would have thought that after Brentford away?
But remember, it's early on. like when you look at the table, you know, you can clearly see that there is not much in it between those that are even like 12th, you know, right away into third position, you know, fourth, third. Yeah, there's nothing in it, you know.
Yeah.
So there's
nothing in
literally,
it, but again, I'll make the point though. We spoke. There was a meltdown after Brentford for Amorim, and again, him potentially losing his job. But
you know why? Because
he's
you
not
haven't
far behind
won
the
nothing.
table.
You haven't
But
won
if
nothing. That's
I know,
why.
but
Been
if he wins,
four.
if United win on Saturday and Liverpool lose, United go above Liverpool.
Yeah, but that it still
And
doesn't mean nothing because it's only 9 games in and you still haven't won nothing.
yeah.
They have won the league. You know,
Yeah. So is 9 games? Is that not a lot of time to
nah,
just no?
it's not a lot of time.
Not a time.
You know what I mean? It's not a lot of time. It really isn't. In the grand scheme of things, it's really nothing. You know, so we will see where they are when we're talking around that February, March time, where it's, you
Oh,
know,
is he going to
everything.
give them? You're going to give them until next year, February, March, to kind of push
100%.
them.
He's bought that
Yeah.
time. He's won the league. He's bought that time.
Yeah.
You know, Amarim
Yeah.
hasn't bought any time.
No. I agree. I agree. But if we're talking about, and again, the noises this season have been, again, the noises have been loud for United and Amorim and this, that, and the other. But nobody would have thought after Brentford away, in the last couple of weeks, that there could be a situation where they're only 2 points behind Liverpool in the table, and could potentially, if Liverpool lose against Brentford or don't win the game, United could be equal on points or above Liverpool. That was. And that's football. That's how it changes, and that's what a couple of weeks can do to you. So, again, he's got the time because he's won the league. But I would think that if we get to November and they're still, huffing and puffing, I think there'll be a lot of questions about Arne Slot and Liverpool, to be honest. But Arsenal look like they've got all the, again, Arsenal in complete form right now. You know, beating Newcastle, beating West Ham, beating Fulham on Saturday as well. All these teams that Arsenal have maybe in the past few seasons struggled to get results against. Newcastle away, Fulham away. Arteta's getting the victories now, and of course, won the Champions League against Atletico on Tuesday. I mean, Arsenal are like a proper challenger this season, and I've said it before. I would not want to play against Arsenal because in every department they're strong, whether it's set pieces, attacking, defensively, the midfield options they've got. Arteta's built a really solid squad right now. I mean, what do you think about their performance so far?
No, I mean, look, it's been good. And to be fair, it's been no different from, the last 2 seasons, right? So they're just picking up from where they left off, So, we'll see how it goes. We all know that Arsenal are good at starting, they're good at the gate. But it's where it gets to the crunch time is where things start to go a bit pear-shaped for them. So, there's really nothing, for me, there's nothing to analyze here, because we know based on data, they're good for it up until it gets to crunch time. And then that's where we see, if they've really evolved into, champions, or if they're still in that place where, they still need to make a few mental adjustments, to carry it over the line. So we'll see. For me, I think, again, there's nothing really to see here.
So for you, there's not too much to sort of get up and down about. I think you're just sort of waiting until we get to Christmas, January, and then really judging the teams.
Because that's where it really gets cracking. The Christmas time, there isn't much breaks. You play on a Wednesday, and then you got a couple of days, and then you're out again on a Sunday or Saturday, and then you're back on it on the Tuesday. And then that's where the players start to really feel it. It takes a toll. Injuries might come in. You're constantly trying to refresh the squad, and so you're playing players that would not necessarily be in your starting 11, but you've got to give so and so a break, etc. And then that's where things change. Do you see what I mean? So for me, we've also got to then account for African Cup of Nations for a lot of these clubs. Fortunately, Arsenal don't really have that problem, so that's a good thing. So if they can keep the players fit, keep the squad fresh, then they have every chance of winning the league. But we like I said, mentality wise, we don't know. When it gets to crunch time, we know that that's where they have those difficulties. That's where they have their shortfalls. So, I said, there's nothing to see right now. They are doing what.
Yeah, I think they're doing great. I think for me, it's just a case of look at their squad now. It's built, in every position, and they've got 2 decent players who can come in. If key players leave, you've got ones who can fill in for them, and potentially, probably in the season's gone past, they've not had those options. So I think, with Arsenal this season, I don't think you can give them a lead this season. I think you've said before, when it comes to crunch time, can they deal with it? But I feel like, and we spoke about this with my friend Gullard on the pod a couple of weeks ago. So if you've not seen that, go and watch that conversation. And at the Emirates, it feels like there's something happening there now. You can almost smell it. It's like they've got this feeling that they've really built for this time, that this is their time now. And again, we've spoken about Liverpool, potentially City not being at their strongest. I don't think, from what I've seen so far of Arsenal, I don't think you can give them much of a lead, because if you give them much of a lead, I don't think they're going to slip up like how they've done previously, because I think there's just something different about them this season. They played a lot of tough teams already. They beat Atletico convincingly in the Champions League, gone to Fulham 1, gone to Newcastle 1, teams that they don't usually do well against in seasons gone by. So it just feels like there's something different there now. So I wouldn't want to give Arsenal a lead, because I feel like if you give them an extended lead, I don't think this time they're going to mess up. And again, just playing against them.
I beg to differ. I feel like Arsenal, like I said, out of the gate, they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. Let them play those same teams during the crunch moment. That's when we see them flapping. Arsenal over the last few years have never been bad starting out the season. They've even had times where they've had a great lead, and then that's where we got the term that they're just bottle jobs. Because how did you lead for 90% of the season and still fold? This is what I think, and with everything that they're doing, and then you mentioned that City being poor, they're still 3 points behind Arsenal. And like I said, it's still early, so there's nothing to see here. But as bad as City are, they're 3 points behind Arsenal.
No, I think City are not bad. I think the difference they've got is Mr. Erling Haaland, which we're going to move on to now. I mean, look, winning against Everton on Saturday as well, 2 goals again for Haaland. Haaland at the moment, he just seems like he's on fire right now. And I think Harry Kane is the best centre forward in Europe right now. But Haaland is, you could probably make an argument and say that he's on par with Kane or just behind him. But Haaland, for me, in terms of as a goal scorer in the Premier League in the last couple of seasons, I think he's just been a revelation, to be honest with you. I mean, when you look at Shearer's record, that's been around for so many years now. Could Haaland potentially break that record, do you think? I don't know. I feel like Kane was in contention to do it if he stayed in the Premier League. But I look at Haaland and I don't feel like Haaland's going to have the longevity in the Premier League that maybe Kane had or Shearer had. So that's where I'll doubt it. But if he keeps doing what he's doing now, I think he could definitely break the record. I mean, he's smashing records since he's joined the Premier League. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, phenomenal goal scorer, and he's been that way inclined. I saw some clips of him as a child where he wasn't even good at finishing, but he knew where to be, right? And he just has that instinct for knowing where to be. And what a goal scorer and machine he is, right? And I feel like if he definitely stayed, in the Premier League longer, of course, that record will be up for grabs, for sure. But we all know that like players of this ilk are longing for La Liga, and playing at the Madrids or Barcelonas, so that they can be in contention for things like the Ballon d'Or and so on, which I don't think he'll be able to achieve being at City. In terms of him, like you mentioned, Harry Kane being, the best centre forward. Did you see his performance against Dortmund last weekend?
Yeah.
What a performance. I mean, my goodness, like you would not think that that's a centre forward. Like some of the stuff he was doing, you just think, wow, that's a footballer. I think that's where I say that's not a centre forward, that's a footballer. Like that is just someone who understands and knows football and can play in almost any position and does it very, 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 very well. When I watched that game, I said, this guy, yeah, that's another level. I hope that they can unlock that in him for the national team, because, mate, if he can perform like that for the national team, boy, there's no telling where the team could go.
Yeah, I agree. I think Harry Kane, I don't know, do you think that with football fans, do you think that he's appreciated as much? Because I remember having a conversation with someone about this, and I put him in my sort of tier 1 when it comes to historical strikers, right? Because of the numbers he's got, his stats, and also you mentioned his performances and just his all-round ability as a striker, not just as a goal scorer, but as a striker. And people seem to kind of think that was the wrong decision, putting him on the same level as, the greatest strikers we've ever seen in Europe and in the Premier League. But when you look at what he's been doing, when he was at Tottenham, playing in a poor team for towards the end of his time at Tottenham. You know, he's broken records. He's scored in the Champions League. He's scored for England at the major tournaments. You know, he's gone to Bayern Munich and absolutely ripped up the league there, by the way. You know, his record is just sensational. Do you think that he's appreciated by fans, like, as much as players like maybe Rooney and those type of characters?
You know what it is? Your only mistake was, you know, linking him to the greats when his career is not over. You know, we should only have that conversation when it's all said and done.
Yeah.
You know,
but the way he's going now, he's in his 30s now. Do you feel like he's almost like he's getting better as he's getting older now?
Which he should, because you're getting more experience. You know, so imagine Erling Haaland at that age. What's that going to look like? You know,
scary.
So, when you think about it, you know, like Erling Haaland is still what, 23, you know, something like that. What does he look like even at 26? Like it's just going to be unreal. Do you see what I mean?
Well, I think a key component is probably the manager he's got and the team he's played in, because when Haaland joined City, they had great Mahrez, De Bruyne, Silva. He had players who could provide for him, right? Yeah. And I feel that the key component in that is Guardiola still being there, and I think he knows how to get the best out of Haaland. You don't really see Haaland getting involved in a lot of link-up play. He's always in the right position, right? He's always making the runs to score goals. So I feel like him at 26 is a good point you've made, and I think it comes down to who's in charge at Man City. If the manager's still there, if the same players are still there, because again, him playing with De Bruyne and you know, now Reinders, they're finding him right. They're getting him in the right positions, and he feeds off that. He's hungry for goals. He knows where to be, and as much as his limitations in other parts of his game, right, when it comes to positions, making runs, and finishing, you know, there's nobody better than Haaland, in my opinion.
I mean, I don't know why people talk about limitations when someone's scoring 30, 40 goals a season. I think it's why we even having this conversation. He's there to put the ball in the net. Who cares about his first touch? Who cares about his hold-up play? Is he producing on the other end like he's supposed to? Absolutely. So we're not out here looking for a complete striker, you know, like Harry Kane is. You know, we're just looking for someone who puts the ball in the net and he does his job very well. And with that being said, you know, this leads us on to another man who has aged like wine, you know, Mr. Danny Welbeck.
Yes,
you know,
Danny
what a player
Welbeck.
he's been, right?
What a play the guy's been. We spoke about him a couple of weeks ago, didn't we? He's again scored 2 goals against Newcastle on Saturday, a 2-1 victory. I tell you, Danny Welbeck, I tweeted this on Saturday. I feel like if he keeps on doing what he's doing, I know he's going to turn 35 in November, but if he carries on this run of form, I don't see why he shouldn't be in contention for an England call-up in the next break, and also potentially going to the World Cup. Because you look at him, sort of, he's almost having this late career resurgence, right? He's had a lot of injuries early parts of his career. But the thing I like about Welbeck is, I'm speaking about him in terms of going to England and getting a call-up, right? We know he's not going to start because Harry Kane's a mainstay and he's not going to lose his place. And only Watkins has done really well for Villa, and that's why he's second choice for England. But you're taking Danny Welbeck, who not just when he starts scores goals, when he comes off the bench against Chelsea, scored 2 goals against them. Like his awareness, his positioning, his in-game intelligence, right? You know, of course he's going to lose a lot of pace because he's getting older. He's 35 almost. But he's finishing to his first goal on Saturday, the little dink. What that was, right? His positioning, he knows where to be. He knows how to link up with other players. He just got the all-round in-game maturity now. So I feel like if he was to get called up for England, I think it would be deserved, and I wouldn't be against that at all. But yeah, Danny Welbeck is aging like fine wine, man, and I'm happy to see it because I like Danny Welbeck. I remember the time when Roy Hodgson was manager, and I would go to England games, and he would be in the squad. Again, a key play for England, not just in the qualifying rounds, but also going to the Euros and World Cups. You know, being a real valuable asset for the team. I mean, what's your thoughts on him potentially getting England call up? Do you think that it would be
deserved?
Yeah.
You know, and you know, I think unfortunately his age just plays against him, which is not something that should, you know, in the grand scheme of things, you know, be something that is considered, because it should just be based on output. But you know, if he is given a chance, I know he will take that chance, and he will not only just bring what he brings on the pitch, but I think he brings the experience off the pitch as well. You know, that leadership quality, and those intangible qualities that you can't really measure, you know. So yeah, man, let's see how that all plays out.
Yeah, 100%. But I want to talk about somebody else now who, I guess their career is in a bit of, I don't know where you'd put Jadon Sancho's career right now. You know, he, again, had a great time at Dortmund, come to the Premier League, signed by Man United under Solskjaer, never really kicked on from there, to be honest. He obviously fell out with Ten Hag, was away from the first team for a number of months, came back in the team, didn't really produce his best form, went on loan back to Dortmund, got to Champions League final, and we're thinking maybe this time he's maybe the penny's dropped now, he's going to kick on with his form. That didn't work. Came back to United, went to Chelsea, it's now gone back to United, now to Aston Villa. And we're hearing these rumours about his lifestyle away from the pitch and, things of that nature. I mean, when you look at Jadon Sancho's career, first of all, how would you sum it up so far? And do you feel like the current situation is in there? Do you think that he can retrieve it now and actually produce what we all know he can do, but for a longer spell of time?
I just feel like he probably just needs to leave the country. It will probably be the best thing for him because his best form has come when he's been in Germany, right? So I think the distractions, unfortunately, it would appear to me that, he's not mentally tough enough to be in what we would call maybe familiar environments, being in the UK. And because of that, it affects his form, really, so maybe he should definitely look for, if it's possible, a loan move, a permanent move, just somewhere where he can just keep his head down and just focus on football, and then, let the football do the talking as it did when he was in Dortmund.
Yeah, I mean, do you think that he's got to take responsibility? Because we talk about players like Rashford leaving and going to Barcelona. It seems like he's having a resurgence there now himself. He's getting monster goals, putting in good performances. But you almost feel like Sancho's got to take responsibility, because I remember Ten Hag leaving him out the team and he went to Holland for a bit and trained there on his own to try and get his mental state right and then come back into the team. He obviously fell out with him publicly. He said that Ten Hag was a liar for saying that he wasn't training well. But when you look at these rumors, you look at content online and you see messages from other people about his habits away from football. I think these players at times, as much as they'll blame coaches and they'll blame the environment, you as a professional, you've got to take charge of your own career. Do you know what I mean? You've got to be more professional. Jadon Sancho, I wouldn't say he's a kid anymore. I think he's played for big clubs. He's played in big competitions and the big stage. This is not an inexperienced player, right? He knows what it takes to perform well. He knows what it takes to kind of, maintain consistency in performance. So there shouldn't really be an excuse, and we shouldn't really be having the same conversation about his habits or his lifestyle. So I think you probably agree that players are going to take responsibility. They have to.
They have to, of course. I mean, it's your career and it's in your own hands. You see what I mean? So you have to take responsibility for it. But of course, we got to just consider his environment, and it just seems, and to me, it just appears that he's just incapable of managing himself in familiar environments, like being in the Premier League, in London, in Manchester, in Birmingham. It just the allure of,
he's been everywhere.
yeah, I mean, anywhere in the UK, I think is just not good for him, and he just needs to be somewhere else, wherever he goes and gets a deal in Holland, it will be better for him because he's not in the UK. If he's back in Germany, then he's not in the UK. If he's in France, he's not in the UK. Spain, he's not in the UK. And I think we'll see a better version of himself because all the familiarity is not there. So he can only focus on football. But you have to be responsible enough to know that about yourself, right? And so if not, then yeah, mate, that's just another one that's gone down the drain. And it is what it is. There's more like him. There's been plenty of footballers that are just like that. So, it is what it is.
Yeah, sure. I think we've got to do an episode about players who waste their potential, I think, because as you mentioned, we've seen it quite often now, particularly like English players as well. There's almost like a disciplinary issue there now, right? So I think it'd be good to kind of touch on it in a different episode at some point. But one of the big breaking news stories, I'll say, that happened over the weekend was the departure of Ange Postecoglou from Forest after a pretty, obviously at the expense of your team, Chelsea, pretty dominant 3-0 performance there. I remember watching, and I remember after the final whistle sort of leaving the TV, and then I got messages, I think, from you and I think from somebody else saying that he's been sacked. And I was thinking, he's been sacked already. Like, it's not even been 20 minutes yet. And to me, that was like crazy, right? That's got to be the most quickest sacking in football history. Like, he didn't even do a press conference, did an interview, nothing. I think he went in the dressing room for 5 minutes, addressed the players, and then he was informed by Edu that he would no longer be the manager, and he left. What do you make of all of that? Because I remember watching Marinakis getting up from his seat during the game, right? And you just knew something was going to happen from that point.
I mean, look, man, if Marinakis is your boss, you know, expect anything to happen, right? Like, you know, it is what it is, man. Like we all could see this from a mile away. You know, we all could see this from a mile away. And you know, the Forest fans, more than anything, should be really, really upset with Marinakis. You know, they should really be upset because, you know, you fired a manager that, you know, was doing very well for your club, you know, brought you back into Europe for the first time in however many years, and then, you know, you get rid of him for whatever the reasons are. You know, some say he didn't get on with Edu, some say whatever they say, I don't know, right? And then you bring in a manager whose philosophy is the polar opposite of the manager you had before, you know, and then you expect things to happen immediately. Remember, like I said about Liverpool, it takes time, right? And so fair enough, he's lost a whole load of games, but if you're going to go from one ultra defensive counter-attacking style of football to now a ultra offensive, you know, attacking style of football, it's just nowhere near close, right? It's not the same. So what did you expect to happen during this period? You know, we're not playing FIFA, we're not playing Football Manager. You know, you can't just pick up the controller and just, you know, make it work. It just doesn't go like that. So yeah, not surprised, you know, like the chairman has no clue what he's doing. So it is what it is, man.
Yeah, but it just, you mentioned about him sacking Nuno, and again, we spoke about this when he first got appointed, and I could have in a way understand, because obviously Nuno came out publicly on 2 occasions and maybe spoke on about their relationship, and he wasn't getting along with him like how he done previously. And Marinakis probably thought, well, you're taking a mickey out of me in public. But I've got to go back to this. End of last season against Leicester City at home, I think it was 2-2. And Marinakis, after the final, also came on the pitch and publicly berated Nuno and his staff for an incident that had taken place during the game, right? And I'm not known any owner in history of football who wants to be seen that much. He's on the pitch after games, he's in the tunnel after games, he's in post-match interviews, by the way, with Morgan Gibbs-White. I mean, I feel like that moment where he went on the pitch after the game and berated Nuno, I think that was the beginning of the end, in my opinion, because yes, we criticize Nuno for doing it publicly, but he's probably thinking, well, hang on a minute, you've not respected me. You've come on the pitch. We could have done this in the dressing room. You could have done it in the tunnel where there's no cameras, but you chose to come on the pitch. I know who's frustrated because they didn't win the game and ultimately Champions League football had been lost at that point. But you've done that publicly, right? So Nuno's probably thinking, well, you've done that publicly to me. You didn't apologize for that, though. And then he's probably thought, well, I'm going to go on TV and interviews. I'm going to speak about our private relationship as well. So I don't think Marinakis could be upset because you've done this to Nuno publicly. We didn't have to. You didn't show him any respect. He even banned Gary Neville from the City ground because he spoke out against him. So this is an owner who is very spontaneous. You know, he's very emotional. He's very erratic in his decision making. And I wouldn't want to play for an owner like that because you don't know what you're going to get. You know.
I mean, look, when at the end of the day, could it just be he's an owner, but he's also a passionate fan, maybe, you know, and because of that, it bleeds out into, you know, going onto the pitch. He says it was because I when he was injured or whatever, and he wanted to come on and check. I think that's absolute nonsense. You know what I mean? I think he definitely went there to, like you say, berate his manager in front of I don't even know how many people the City ground, you know, seats, but I can imagine it's over 40,000 people, you know, and that's absolutely ludicrous. Like you said, it's never been seen before across any division of football, right? Any division of football, it's not been seen. And
even your former owner, Roman Abramovich, will never do that. He'll never come on a pitch and berate one of your managers because the managers you've appointed wouldn't stand for that. Do you know what I mean? It's a lack of respect. Yes, there's an issue. I get you mentioned he's a passionate fan, but come on, there's a way to do things. You can do it in a tunnel. You can do it, call him privately or whatever. But to come on a pitch, I felt that was the beginning of the end because Nuno at that point, he didn't recover from that. You know, it was embarrassing for him, for his staff as well. And I felt that trust and the bond they might have had, regardless of Edu's situation, right? I thought that situation on the pitch kind of planted the seeds for this to happen. And Marinakis has got to take responsibility there. You know, you're the one you're hiring these managers, you're firing them. And as you mentioned, Ange and Nuno were polar opposites, right? But he's gone and he's appointed Sean Dyche now as a new manager. Do you know what I mean? Opposite. Do you know what I mean? I don't look. Sean Dyche is a good manager, right? He kept Burnley up, did a really good job with them for a number of seasons at Burnley, kept Everton in the division. But when you look at Sean Dyche being appointed as a new coach, right, what direction is that club going in?
I mean, I think Sean at least is close enough to Nuno by way of being defensively sound and able to play that counter-attacking style, right? So his philosophy at least would be very familiar to the players, you know. And let's not forget, Sean, you know, with Burnley, you know, took them to Europe, you know, finishing seventh, you know, so he does have that in him. Now, it'll be great to actually see, you know, now with more resources, better players, you know, this type of thing, you know, what would we actually get out of Sean? You know, so I'm intrigued to see how it all kind of plays out. So I think it's a good appointment, you know, like anyone else with Marinakis. If you don't do well within a short space of time, you will be fired. And that's just how it goes. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not a stable working environment, is it? Clearly
No.
at Nottingham Forest. But I agree. I think Sean Dyche, I think he's a safe appointment. I think he will keep them in the division for sure. And I think them going to appoint him, they clearly feel like maybe they're in a relegation fight at the moment. So I think Sean Dyche will definitely do a good job there in terms of keeping them in the division. But it's whether they can actually kick on, because we've not seen Sean Dyche in a situation where he can challenge for Europe regularly and as you mentioned, have the resources he's got now. So it'd be interesting to see how Sean Dyche gets on there. And I thought they'd be safe no matter what, but it's just whether they can kick on from there. But did you see the crazy game at Palace on Saturday? 3-3. What a game that was, man. They probably should have won the game, Palace, to be honest.
What a game. What a game. I mean, that's one I actually watched. And I just thought, oh, you know, out of all the games there, I said, this one's got goals in it. This one's got goals, and boy, they didn't disappoint. And it was so unfortunate for Mateta to not get the fourth. You know, he's done everything right all game. And in the literal last 30, 45 seconds, he launches it over the bar where he's like, even if you miss, you couldn't miss.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where it's like, you know, you've caught it too cleanly, or whatever the case is. Whereas if it came off your shin or something like that, it would have gone in, and it just wasn't meant to be, you know.
Yeah.
But look, man, what a performance from Mateta. What a performance from Glasner's boys. You know, I think that's a manager that, you know, I wouldn't say is going under the radar, because I've heard of people speaking quite highly of him, but I think that's another one to watch out for one of these big jobs when one of the bigger managers, you know, move on to other things.
Yeah, for sure. I think, I agree with you. I think Mateta had a great week as well. I mean, he scored for France during the international break, and then he scores a hat-trick, but it's almost like the hat-trick doesn't matter now, because he could have scored 4 goals instead. So, I don't know what Wilfred Zaha would have thought about the miss in the last minute. I know they've had a bit of Zaha came out on social media and spoke about not the feud, but the Mateta's interview, calling him out about Zaha laughing about Mateta potentially playing for France one day. And again, he could have seen his trajectory upwards. I mean, he's been fantastic for the last couple of seasons for Palace. And a really, really good performance from Mateta. And as you mentioned, Glasner at Palace, even Areola at Bournemouth, these are 2 good coaches who have kind of quietly gone under the radar, like you mentioned. You know, they've turned up at their clubs, done a really good job. Obviously, Areola's not won trophies like Glasner has, won the FA Cup and the Community Shield. But these are 2 upcoming coaches who, you know, I agree with you, will be on the radar of a lot of big clubs who want to progressively improve and, you know, to show what they can do. But quickly before we finish, what have you made of Mateta's sort of uprise? Because I mentioned about Zaha and the situation. Do you feel like, I don't think anyone would have seen this though. When Mateta first signed for Palace, I don't think anyone would have seen him become this player. But I guess with hindsight, you just, you know, it's strange, isn't it?
I mean, like, he must have held on to what Zaha said, and maybe he should thank Zaha, you know, because sometimes you just need to hold on to something to motivate you, you know. And Zaha says that there were 10 other people there, but he remembered your voice, you know, and your voice, you know, probably because you was the captain, you know, you was the leader of the group. And, you know, to be fair, even if there's 10 of us there, there's certain things as a leader you just shouldn't, like, you should distance yourself from that type of banter because it affects the group, you know. So I think he just probably held on to that and just thought, you know what, I'm going to show him and I'm going to show them, you know. And he's done that in abundance, you know. And so we'll see, you know, if he's on that plane to the World Cup, and France somehow win the World Cup, and he leaves there with a World Cup medal. There you have it. What a career, right? Do you see what I mean?
He's
Like,
retired now. Yeah.
yeah. What a career. You know, like, I'll be honest. I thought, you know, as a player that nobody talks about, Odsonne Edouard, right? I don't know if you remember him,
I think
right?
I do. Yes. Yeah.
He played at Celtic and he was
Yeah.
amazing, and then
Yeah.
came down to Palace, and I thought, yeah, this guy is going to be the next one up for France as well, you know. And for whatever reason, he just never kicked on, you know. And then Mateta comes in and didn't kick on like immediately, but if you look at him now, like just his physique, right? If you look at him now compared to when he came, you know, he's a different animal. And I feel like that's a player right there that most clubs could do with. You know, I would take him at Chelsea, to be totally honest with you. I feel like he's reminiscent of Didier Drogba in a way. You know, the big, strong guy who can hold up the ball, can get a goal. You know, he's very, very good in the air. You know, he's got those type of attributes that would, you know, fit, you know, that style of club. So
Well, do
I
you know
think
what,
he's
Flex? I
London.
thought you're right. I feel like a huge part of that goes down to Glasner as well, because Glasner's obviously French as well. So I thought when he came to the club, he would have gone into Mateta and said, listen, you've got all the attributes to be a top striker here. So, you know, get shredded, get in the gym, improve your physique, like work on your runs, work on your finishing. I think Glasner coming into Palace was a huge factor in Mateta's form, I believe, because what has happened is something's clicked and he's just gone beast mode. And everything about his game at the moment, he's unplayable at times. Mateta, he's
He
big,
is.
he's
He
strong,
really
he's
is.
finished, he's quick. I mean, he's got the whole package, really.
He really does, you know. And let's just see how it plays out, you know.
Yeah,
I really do wish him the best, you know what I mean. And so we'll see where we are at the end of the season.
that's it. That is football for you. That's funny old game, man. But listen, guys, thanks for 100 subscribers, by the way. Funny to pass that now. So thanks to everyone who has interacted and engaged with us over the last couple of weeks. And I'm glad you're enjoying the content. And we hope to bring you more of this throughout the next coming weeks and months. Again, follow us on Instagram, Twitter, we're on TikTok as well. You know, engage with our content. We love hearing your opinions. But guys, comment on the comment section on YouTube. We want to hear about your thoughts about Liverpool United, about Mateta's form. You know, do you think Sean Dyche should be great at Forest? We want to know your opinions on this stuff. So don't hesitate to keep engaged, keep interacting. And as always, Flexx, it's been a pleasure. And
Yes, sir.
I'll see you again next week.
Next week, my man. Take care, guys.
You too.